Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, excuse me, welcome to the April 29th, 2020 Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are again meeting on Zoom during the COVID-19 quarantine, lockdown, sheltering, whatever you want to call it. We have a somewhat smaller agenda tonight, as a lot of our questions are either answered or pushed off into the future. So a lot of what we would normally do tonight, we have a little bit of a respite from. So I will quickly share the agenda just so that everyone can see it. Second. All right, so there we have our agenda. We are not greeted with the presence of our town manager, Rick LaFond, our town accountant, Sue Moquin, or the Board of Selectmen. That will be addressed in first item of our new business, the town manager changes financial impact. Then we'll briefly talk about the FY21 budget review and reviewing the warrant articles for both the special and annual town meeting, and then go into liaisons, correspondence, of which there is none, and reviewing minutes, of which we have none. Our next meeting will be next Wednesday. We will hopefully have some more information next Wednesday on the budget to review the proposed budget, but we'll get to that in a minute. So starting off first, the topic that we have been discussing over the last several meetings has been the overlap of the new town manager and the current town manager, and having some time for transition between the two of them. We have gotten information, and I will call that up right now on my screen and out. So we have gotten information from the town accountant and the town manager stating that working with the Board of Selectmen, looking at the actual salary for the new town manager, reclassing the previous assistant town manager's salary into the article that was approved at town meeting, which was originally paid out of the town manager's salary line item. The funds to cover both positions for a period of time are available. After further review of the line item, we've determined that the funds are sufficient for the contractual obligations and to Rick and to the new town manager, with a remainder of the year of approximately $130. So we are $130 over the amount that we need to have to cover having transition time between current town manager Rick LaFond and the new incoming town manager.
You sure it's a transition time? Because I read contractual to be the severance and the pay, but not the consulting.
I can get that. I can get clarification on that. I believe that it is both.
All right, good.
But I can get clarification on that. Does anyone else have questions on this? Any questions about the new town manager or the town manager change position at all while we're on this topic?
Do we know when the new manager starts and when that person will start attending the finance committee meeting?
I actually have not heard that yet. I hadn't heard before this message that an agreement had been reached. I don't know.
An agreement. I thought I saw on the online that it was May 4th of all dates.
Yeah, it's either May 4th or May 11th. Let me see if I can find it, because I think they did reach an agreement. I'm pretty sure. I'll do it.
Yeah, I thought it was posted on the Abington Facebook page saying welcome starting May 4th.
Yeah, that new the Abington Town News page that's done by Rick.
And to answer your question, Matt, I have questions. I just don't think they're going to get answered.
While that is entirely possible, I would still
Yeah.
entertain your questions.
No, but I don't want to waste your time.
Oh, you never waste my time or the rest of ours.
This is May 4th.
May the 5th.
So new town manager will start on May 4th. I think
that's also Rick's last day, right?
I think Rick's last day, the last I had heard was that he was planning on the 11th for his last
Okay.
day. But I
Yeah.
think that was his last day of full-time work. And I don't know if there was an agreement of additional consulting or part-time work going past that date. That again is something we can get more details on.
And if there's something in the charter that says this new person has to have X, X, or X, and they don't, how is that being handled? I mean, even financially, how do you pay somebody that doesn't meet the qualification? There you go. There's my question, Matt.
Do you want me to read? Should I read from
Please.
to news, or is it not appropriate?
Yeah, no, please. I just
If you
know the
could
news.
address that would be good.
Okay, sure. So Scott Basie will become Abington's acting town manager this Monday, May 4th, with current town manager Rick LaFawn remaining on through the week to help with the transition. According to the contract, he will earn $132,000 in this role. His title includes acting because under the town charter, Abington's town manager must have a bachelor's degree. Lambiase does not. He is scheduled to receive his degree this September. Once he finishes his degree, his title will change to town manager. Under the terms of the contract, selectmen may terminate his contract if he does not complete the degree within 6 months.
Does it clarify what type of bachelor's or just any bachelor's?
I can look that up for you.
Just curious. I mean, I'm coming in late, so sorry for the questions.
No, it's fine. I can.
It's like a serious headset you have on, Joe.
Yeah, I do a lot of gaming, so it comes in really nice.
Hey, man, you are ready to go to war with that thing.
Yeah, you guys are coming through crystal clear.
I'm just taking notes in case anyone is wondering. I'm eventually going to translate my notes into meeting minutes for us for like the last month's worth of
Yeah, we're in
worth of stuff.
We're in
We've
interesting
not gotten-
times.
Have not gotten there yet. We're adjusting to where we're at. We definitely miss our recording secretary, Deb Libby.
Is she doing okay? I haven't seen her in quite a
She
while.
is doing okay. She's fairly sequestered in her house, trying to stay safe, but she's doing well from the last update that I got from her.
Oh, good.
Which we are very
Town
happy
manager.
about.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Russ.
Manager is expecting to complete his degree in September, and it is in business administration.
That makes sense.
So did Rick have an advanced degree, or does Rick?
Not that I'm aware of.
I know he had done town manager. He had been a town
Yes.
manager before.
Yeah, Rick had been assistant town manager here and had been town manager in Carver before coming here.
Which again, I think
Okay.
is like I think that's somewhat of a trump card if there's somebody who has that kind of experience. But
Other questions about the new town manager, current town manager transition? Anything else to bring up there? Okay. Without any, moving on to our next agenda item, the discussion of the fiscal year 21 budget. For those who are just joining us, Joe, and anybody online, the most recent discussion that we had at the end of our last meeting last week was a request for the town manager and town accountant to look into a sort of if things go south budget where we're projecting at 10% lower revenues than what we were projecting for the budget that we have currently balanced. that we've been working on since December. That draft, that projection has not been completed yet. It's only been 7 days, so it's not a great surprise there. I do have some notes from Rick, which I can share. The overall reduction would be approximately 1.8 million for the budget. That would be an overall reduction in state and local receipts. Some of the items and places where there would be potential for large savings for the town, or ways to make that up without serious staffing concerns, staffing let-goes. One would be to institute a trash collection fee instead of just paying the trash collection out of the general fund, to have that become a fee-based payment. Another would be the health insurance. I said that the current split for most town employees is 70-30. There would be a lot of collective bargaining that would need to be agreed to. And to bring that down, each 1% on the health insurance is approximately $65,000. So there would be room to gain money there if the unions in town were amenable to doing that rather than laying off people. Another area would be that would also be subject to collective bargaining would be wage freezes. And then, of course, we've already talked about the new positions that we have currently in the budget, and potentially not filling them until we're sure that we have the money to pay them. So that would be another area that's a portion that would certainly not be able to get us to the 10% all by itself. Another option, another comment that Rick had made was potentially using free cash, other resources that we were looking to put into stabilization to buy time to achieve some of the other things that we might have to either collect bargain or do other, like go through other hoops to put into place. Those were the major points that Rick had talked about as far as the big areas that they are looking into as far as how things would go with this. So we are still waiting on the state to know if there's going to be a change in what the projected state aid will be. The projection that we have for state aid has us balancing our budget right now. If the state stays at or near that amount, we won't have to jump through nearly as many hoops, which would be good. Last week, Chris had provided us some insider information on that. I don't know if there are any new updates there, Chris, or
No, I haven't heard anything else.
nothing there. So does anyone have questions or comments or anything to discuss?
Just a quick question again, and sorry for, I'll take really quick, brief answers because I wasn't here. But where that 10% come from? Is that worst case, best case?
So we were working through kind of, okay, what happens if? And Greg was saying that he and his company essentially did a 20% look at their budget.
50.
And Chris was talking about, Chris had some information from people who were saying that state aid was, Chris, remind me what the percentage was that they were looking.
They said that the governor had submitted 44 billion, and the latest would be that it would be reduced by 4 billion, or about 9 or 10%.
So just like a 9% drop in the state budget, not knowing where that drop would come from. And then we were kind of factoring somewhere between that number and Greg's number would be a place for us to hopefully create a worst case scenario budget that we could then work up from closer to where the budget is right now, if things aren't as bad as.
But if the state level is 9, let's just say 10, wouldn't at the city level it be even an additional on top of that?
So if our state aid drops by 9%, that doesn't mean our town revenues drop by 9%. The state aid is a sizable chunk of our revenue, but between property taxes and excise tax and the various other ways that the town brings in money, it likely wouldn't be a overall like matching drop. The property taxes won't actually change. It's just a question of if there will be a percentage of people, that's a large enough percentage of people that are unable to pay their taxes, that would potentially decrease. Similar with excise tax, if people aren't buying new cars, or if people if people are selling their cars, etc. And then the local restaurant tax we would expect to drop, but that's I think
300,000.
I think the highest that's been in the budget is somewhere around $300,000. So even if that drops 50%, we're not looking at a huge drop in revenue there. So.
Next, I was just picturing that with the rate of unemployment we have right now, I wasn't sure what that impact is at the city level, because
right.
while there are still some fixed things people got to pay, doesn't mean they're going to pay them. I mean, if you have a mortgage, that's one thing, the tax is going to get paid. But if you don't have a mortgage, you're not going to be paying your property tax anytime soon if you're laid off.
Exactly. So that's what we had talked about is what is the overall impact on the town revenue.
And
So we kind of came to a 10% number being a place where it seemed reasonable to adjust to or project to.
We did look back to 09, 10, 11,
Yes.
12 as well.
Yeah, Chris had provided some
As a
good
guide.
numbers there.
Yeah, I mean, because this could be multi-year, right? I mean, because the impacts we have today, even if we were slowly recover, that's going to trickle over for a few years.
Yep.
we also have legislation that's trying to get pushed right now for people to not actually pay their mortgage. I don't know if anybody.
Is it for people to not pay their mortgage, or is it for the government to pay the mortgage for people?
The legislation, from what I understand, is for people to not pay their mortgage. The government would subsidize some things, but again, it's berserk. But I mean, I don't.
Yes.
All I'm saying is, I think the 10% is even skinny at this point. Again,
Yeah, that's my concern.
if you budget for worst case, my point last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was to budget for we budgeted for our company for 50%. We literally tried to cut everything by 50%. We took a lot of things like salaries, stuff like that for the executives, cut them by between 25 and 50%, depending upon who they were and who we are. So those are specific things. Now, if we're looking at only 10%, I understand the point that if the budget only gets cut by, if the mass budget gets cut by 10% or 9%, whatever it is, it's not going to trickle down to exactly 10% to us. I just think there's going to be a lot of people that are affected. Our median income is good in this town, which is good, but there's going to be a lot of people that are affected. So it's literally you're rolling the dice with whatever number you put up there. So
yeah.
I think we met in the middle at 10%.
Yep.
And I think what Rick has done is identify levers that can be used so that if you need to use more, there are more levers. You use more of the lever.
Yep.
How does that work? Because we're getting close to having a finalized budget. And again, the impact will likely be throughout the year. So like, can you have
That's
can you have a finalized budget and then also pull those levers as needed throughout the year?
So that's part of what makes this a very difficult process for us to be going through right now. One of the things that we did talk about is that based on the changes, the laws that the legislature has put in, we can go past July 1st without having passed a budget for this year, without a town meeting approved budget, partially because of just trying to get enough people in the same place to pass a town budget at town meeting, but also because of the fiscal instability and all of the unknowns of trying to project what the economy is going to look like in June of 2021, for example. So it is possible for us to essentially roll over this year's budget into next year, doing like 1/12 in July, 1/12 or 1/12 or slightly higher in July, 1/12 or higher in August, etc. So one of the things I was going to talk about on the upcoming 2 points, reviewing the special and annual town meeting warrant articles, is there is legislation that the Senate is reviewing, potential legislation that the Senate is reviewing, that the town moderator, Sean Riley, has let me know about, that has come from, I think from, or at least in participation with our state senator, John Keenan, where they are looking to lower to a specific small percentage the quorum numbers for town meetings that would allow us to essentially hold town meeting at some point in the relatively near future, even if all of this is continuing past like mid to late June. We are looking right now at June 22nd, I believe it was, for town meeting. That was, yeah, we're looking to schedule town meeting for June 22nd as of right now. So we don't have quite the urgency we would otherwise have in reviewing, in finalizing a budget or reviewing the warrant articles that we would have if we were still expecting a mid to late May town meeting. So it does give us a little more time to try to get a better picture on what's coming from the state and what the overall economy will look like.
Is there
Yeah.
any insight to what that actual town meeting would look like? I mean, June 20th is very, very close, and I can't imagine them lifting social distancing by then.
So one of the discussions, it would be very difficult for us to try to get 150 people into one place for a town meeting at that time. That's where the legislation that's in the Senate right now is coming from, dropping to a percentage of that. If we were able to do it with essentially somewhere like 30 to 40 people in the auditorium, spaced out, like distance between, I think that's where they see as a somewhat more reasonable number.
That just sounds like trying to legislate the town on a fractional percent of people. That
Yes.
sounds like I can't see how that. I mean, again, sorry for coming in late, but I
No,
can't
no.
see how that. I can't see how that makes sense. I mean, 30 or 40 people get to vote on the budget. I mean, for me, 150 seems like a ridiculously small number. It should be a lot higher, but
It
I'm
should
not
be
sure how.
higher.
I'm not sure how you can manage that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what our typical town meeting attendance numbers is somewhere between usually like 155 and like 175, 180.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already dealing with a very fractionally small percentage of the town that's actually coming and choosing to participate in discussing and passing the budget and things of that nature.
Yeah. 30 or 40 sounds like I can't
30
see
or
how that can
40
even fly.
it's and that's why that has never been
And that, and
numbered.
and that's going to include the town moderator, the Abington Finance Committee,
Yep,
right? I
exactly.
mean, and we already know we want to vote.
Yeah. So, yes. So
And
the
to
whole
top it
thing.
off, sorry,
Go ahead, Greg.
to top it off, all these levers that everybody's talking about are going to be being pulled by a new person.
Right.
Right.
That's
So
the big-
that's another aspect of this is the transition to the new town manager and having the new town manager come in and work with the existing staff and taking a look at the budget overall and seeing what his thoughts are on it and where he lies is definitely something that we need to have in place before we make our final decisions on these things.
We'll in 2010 when it started to hit the budget, the recession, they actually had a second town meeting in October.
Yep.
To reduce the budget.
Yeah. And so what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to at least have the basis of something that we would not need to come back mid-year, if at all possible, to do that. Other comments, questions? All right, so for next week, we will continue to work to get those numbers, I won't say worst case, but the bad case scenario budget. And we'll work with Rick and Sue and hopefully with, is it Scott? Russ, the new town manager?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yep.
Is it Scott?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And Scott, as he starts to get into the role and acclimated, he'll have been in the role for, I think, 2 days at the point that we need. So plenty of experience at that point.
Basically a veteran.
Yeah, totally. So we'll continue to do that. Are there, moving on to special town meeting and annual town meeting articles? We went through them a couple of weeks ago. It's not that the warrant is not as pared down as it might end up being for when we actually have town meeting. We may just go with the most basic financial items that we can go with to get into the next year. Were there any articles that people wanted to discuss or to follow up on at this time? We did discuss, for Joe's benefit, for the benefit of anyone watching, we did discuss, there were a couple of articles or items in the capital plan that we discussed last week with the school department and the DPW. For example, the Center Street Bridge is not in a position that we need to do that right now this year, so we're going to hold off and not have that included in the plan. Painting the Frollo, same thing, not something that needs to take place this year. So that's another place where we can put more money into stabilization and have money that we have set aside for if the budget really tanks. So.
Can you explain how stabilization actually works for me being new on the
So the way that stabilization works is it is essentially our savings account as a town. And the way that it has been used, it's only been used, I think, 1 year, either 1 or 2 years while I've been on the committee. And it was essentially as a supplement to, we were still coming out of the recession when I was first joining the committee last time. And it was used essentially as a supplement to the overall income of the town to help us to balance the budget. It was not large amounts that were used, but used to make sure that we could make the budget balance. We don't want to have to use stabilization money to balance our budget. We want the budget to balance between income and expenses. But in cases where the economy goes south and we're left with 1 year issues to deal with, that's the idea of the stabilization fund.
Okay, thank you.
Any other things people wanted to discuss there? Okay, moving on to the other part of our agenda. We have liaison reports. Do we have any liaison reports? Anyone reached out to their department heads or been reached out to? All right, Russ, nothing? Okay. As mentioned, we don't have any correspondence. We don't have meeting minute notes to go over. So that brings us to the schedule for our next meeting, which is next Wednesday, May 6th, 7 o'clock on Zoom. We will be inviting our new town manager to join us for the first time. Greg,
Do we have any other scheduled guests?
What was that?
Do we have any other scheduled guests?
We do not have other scheduled guests as of right now. As the warrant gets more finalized, we may have either the planning board, zoning board representatives, or specific petitioners if there are petitioned articles that are financial, come in and talk to us about the details of them if we need them to or want them to. But outside of that, we are mostly to the town manager, town accountant portion of the guest list. So,
Okay, thanks.
is there still a desire to re-invite the Board of Selectmen to go over any questions with them?
I think probably yes, but is it appropriate for this committee to be asking those kind of questions?
So the question that I have been asking is which questions are financially appropriate questions for us to be asking. One of the points that has been made is the question of qualifications. It seems to be addressed with the acting town manager portion, but of the information that Russ was reading earlier, but trying to determine if they would be putting the town in a place where we would end up having financial issues, constraints, like legal issues, because we're violating our own charter or something like that.
And you have to look at the climate in the next 12 months. I mean, I'm just trying to understand. I don't know. I'm part of a committee in the town. I don't really understand a lot about this person's background that is going to forget about me as on a committee. Just is they going to lead the town? I think that from what I've heard, there were some pretty decent people for whatever it is. I'm just trying to understand what and why a specific thing was picked, and also why are we making why are we putting an acting thing on there? We weren't looking for an acting town manager. That's not what we were going for. We were going for a town manager. I mean, again, I'm just trying to understand, especially in light of what is going to happen in the next 12 months, that it's probably going to be pretty intricate. It's not going to be just easy sailing where people come in and go, hey, I need a truck for 50 grand. And everybody looks and says, hey, we got the 50 grand. Let's do it. I mean, even the levers that people are speaking about, I just how is somebody who hasn't done it? Those are the questions, Matt. So, and
Yep.
again, maybe they're appropriate, maybe they're not. I don't know. I think every question is appropriate. People can fight me on that one every day of the
Well,
week.
I think questions of that sort are definitely good questions to be asking the selectmen. I don't know if they're questions to ask the selectmen at the finance committee meeting or questions to go to the selectmen meeting and ask them about. I would probably lean towards the latter, but I know they have another meeting coming up fairly soon where it'd probably be a good place to attend the Zoom for that and ask them those questions.
Yep.
Are those Zoom meetings public?
Yes.
Okay.
As long as they're not in executive session. When they're in executive session, which they should only be for very specific reasons and purposes, contract negotiations, things like that.
Well, like for example, this one, like if I look at the Abington Finance Committee webpage, I can see it says Zoom, but I don't really see a link for the average citizen to join in.
Yep. So this meeting is not being broadcast live, and the Zoom is not published out, but the selectmen meetings are live, and I believe that the link has to be shared out. You can certainly look into providing the link for anyone who is wanting to attend the selectmen meeting and making sure that we get them that information.
Okay.
I do think the question about Rick's last day and if there's any part-time or consulting work that's being done after May 11th is something that we need to have answered, and if that part-time or consulting work is also going to be covered in the financial information that we discussed earlier, or if that needs a separate source of finance. So I will look into that during the week and get that information, get any information I get on that out to you. And depending on where we're at with that, we may request the selectmen join us for that purpose.
Sounds good.
Anyone have anything else?
Nope.
Nothing else for tonight. Any discussions, any motions?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn and a second. Is there any discussion on it? Without any, all those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.